Was the general consensus then among the primary decision makers that it would be an April start
Yes,
date?
Absolutely. Yes.
Prime Minister, have you clarified the process thing, right? So freshly squeezed orange juice is out, but cut up watermelon would be in. At what point in the process of chopping up of fruit does it become too processed to have the GST taken off it,
Yeah, look, as I said, there are always going to be definitional issues. Every other country grapples with this when they have exemptions from GST or from value-added tax, as it's called in some other countries. There are processes for determining that. We will go through a process for determining that. Everyone will be very clear about what it is.
Have you managed to find an economist that has publicly said on record that this is a good idea yet?
I haven't been looking for one. Ultimately, economists will always find reasons to not do things. This policy is very clearly targeted at the people who are struggling to pay their grocery bills at the checkout. I've yet to meet an economist that fits in that category.
Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, which you've just talked extensively about, you relied heavily on expert advice and on an evidence base. Why are you putting that to the side for your GST announcement?
This is a practical measure that will help to ease some of the financial pressure on families when they are going through the checkout at the supermarket.
So you don't care that the evidence is gone?
What was that?
You don't care that there's no evidence or tax experts aren't backing you up on this?
This is a practical cost of living measure.
Yeah. I can ask about offsetting the fruit and veggie break with depreciation on buildings. What's the justification for not allowing building owners depreciation when most other businesses can?
That was a temporary measure that was introduced during the COVID-19 period. Depreciation on commercial buildings was first removed by Bill English in about 2010. It was reintroduced as a temporary COVID-19 economic stimulus measure. We were pretty clear over the last 18 months or so that we were winding back all of the last of the COVID-19 economic stimulus, and this was one of the last pieces of that stimulus to have been removed.
The equity question of other businesses can claim depreciation, but building owners can't. Is that an equity issue?
As I've indicated, this is restoring what was the status quo before the pandemic.
Sure. I just wanted to, Prime Minister, have you got any more details of the deal with BlackRock? Anything the government gave BlackRock or BlackRock promised the government?
We didn't give BlackRock anything. We worked with them to encourage them to open an equity fund. They're out there looking for New Zealand-based equity investors at the moment. That's their primary market for the fund that they are establishing, and they have a range of renewable energy investments that they're keen to invest in.
But there was no deal really. It was just an announcement.
Well, I guess we helped to facilitate them establishing the fund, but was there a financial incentive involved? No, there wasn't. I met with them, Dr. Woods met with them, my predecessor met with them. We've been working with them to encourage them to establish this fund. It is one of the things that we've heard from institutional investors in New Zealand, that there have not been any renewable energy funds of scale for them to invest in.
There was nothing stopping them setting that up. There was nothing the government did that made it easier for them. You just said, we like the idea.
Well, we encouraged them.
So I've got a bag of shopping here that I've bought at New World, and I just like...
What a surprise!
I just like your help in determining whether or not there's GST on it. This is some basil. It's in a pot. It's growing, and it's a herb. Would that there have GST on it?
That is a plant, so we'll have to. I don't have a clear answer for you on that, but you'll absolutely get one.
Right. What about this here? This is, I guess, it's processed. It's coriander that's been chopped off, but it's in a packet.
That you wouldn't pay GST on that? Nope.
Okay, so that's exempt.
Yep.
What about a bulb of garlic?
You would not pay GST on that, no.
It's a vegetable.
Garlic is counted.
What about this here vacuum-packed peeled cloves of garlic?
That would have to consider how it was processed in the packaging.
Okay, there's a few others here as well. Bear with me.
Look, can I be clear? I could probably save you some time. We've been clear. It's the distinction is whether something's processed or unprocessed. There are always going to be products that sit at the margin of that, and we will make sure that there is a very clear list, effectively, of products that sit at the margin, so that everybody knows whether they're going to be charged GST or not. The same thing applies in every other country that has a differentiated form of value-added tax. They can navigate their way through that. I'm comfortable that we can navigate our way through that. Other questions? Yes.
Just on the mistake in the press release. So the government didn't proactively correct it with the media, but it also didn't reactively correct it either afterwards yesterday. So why are we only finding out today that there was a mistake in that release?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I wasn't actually aware of it at the time. I only became aware of it subsequent to that. Otherwise, I probably could have corrected in my own speaking notes at the press conference that we did afterwards. So we will make sure that that doesn't happen again.
There was all that media reporting. Are you suggesting that the government didn't look at any of the media reporting yesterday on the announcement?
Without insulting everyone in the room, I generally don't. Joe?
Just a few questions, if I may. How much did the focus groups factor into the GST announcement? I mean, can you put a weight on it in terms of science, evidence, focus groups, polling? Those focus groups, how much they factor?
What I said at the beginning of the year when I took on this job was that I was going to be focused on practical cost of living measures. You'll see a range of them were announced in the budget. That includes the free prescriptions, it includes cheaper early childhood care, cheaper or free public transport. And I indicated at the time that we would continue to look at options to ease cost of living pressure for New Zealand households. That is what the Labour Party made its decision based on.
You've said that you inherited a government. At what point, if at all, has the Chris Hipkins government begun? What policies are we beginning Chris Hipkins government with?
It's a difficult thing to characterise. What I've indicated is when I became Prime Minister, there are a number of work programmes underway that I've continued on, as any Prime Minister would do when they're changing roles halfway or partway through a parliamentary term. That doesn't mean that I would have done things slightly differently had I been in charge right from the beginning of the term. Undoubtedly, I would have. I might have had a slightly different set of priorities. I think what New Zealanders will see during the campaign is what a Chris Hipkins government in the next term will look like.
Has it started though? I mean, some tunnels across the harbour crossing, are they a Chris Hipkins government? Is GST off fruit and veg? Is that a Chris Hipkins government?
Those things that we are announcing are all things that reflect what I would like to do in the next 3 years and beyond. The tunnels across the Waitemata, for example, are a critical part of unlocking extra public transport routes. It allows us to put buses on the Auckland Harbour Bridge and create walking and cycling routes across the Waitemata, which we currently can't do. So all of these things are connected. I'm proud of that policy. I think it's a good one.
You've also said that you don't have any money for the campaign and that political parties shouldn't be campaigning on big political promises. So are you going to pitch an uncosted vision, or are you not going to pitch a vision?
No, we'll certainly be... because there's two things you do in a campaign. One is you do set out a vision, you do set out what sort of country that you want to create, and we will do that, and I will do that. But then what I will also be doing is making sure that the specific commitments I make in terms of steps towards realising that vision are properly costed, are affordable, and are deliverable.
Prime Minister, if I was to go down to Bunnings Warehouse and get a punnet of lettuce seedlings and take them home, would they be GST exempt?
No, you would pay GST on those almost certainly. But Amelia...
And use it for a salad.
You can keep going if you like. I've already answered that question. Amelia.
I've got a question. Following the Public Service Commission review into the 40K party of ministry, has there been any consequences or changes since then? And did any of the government representatives or ministers or MPs attend?
I don't know the answer to the second question. I can that last question rather, as to whether there were any ministers present at that. I'll certainly endeavour to find out for you, and we can get that answer to you. I don't think it was acceptable. It was a far too larger expenditure for the occasion. Yes, it's appropriate to mark an occasion such as that when somebody from one of those senior roles is leaving, but certainly not with the level of expense that we've seen. I understand that some of that money has been paid back, and I just want to underscore the point that I don't think that was an acceptable use of taxpayer money.
Would you ever like to see cap on things like farewells, Christmas parties for government?
Most government departments and agencies have those sorts of practices in place now. So I think it was somewhat of a surprise that this was ever allowed to happen in a government agency, and I certainly don't think it should ever happen again.
Minister Michael Baker said today's COVID decisions are a missed opportunity, and says that now is the opportunity to work with institutions, like work with employers, schools and other venues to encourage people not to attend if they're sick. Don't go swimming if you've got gastro or something like that. Would you agree with them?
Well, look, I've said right from the beginning of our COVID-19 response, there is a difference between requirements that government puts in place and people being good people and doing the right thing. Shouldn't require a government rule or requirement for people to do the right thing. It's always been the case. If you're sick, try not to infect other people, stay home, get better, wear a mask potentially, stay away from other people. These are just things that you do because you're a good human rather than because the government requires you to do them.
Bit of common sense, but the government has levers to be able to actively encourage that. So that, you have the power to say, well, swimming pools should put up signs, so that's just an example. So do you think that could be something worth exploring?
We're now, as we sort of exit the pandemic emergency response, which we've now pretty much exited, we're at that point now where people should take responsibility for their own actions. Mark?
You say people don't need laws to be good people. Why is it illegal to drive drunk?
I think that is a different thing where I'm not proposing to change the law. When it comes to managing your health, when it comes to not infecting other people, there is always going to be an element of personal responsibility in that.
We've spoken to a dairy owner who has been robbed, who says that the government isn't doing enough to address youth crime. Are you?
There's always more to be done. I think that we have certainly seen a spike in youth offending over the last 18 months or so that's been unacceptable. We've done a number of things already, but I think that there's more to be done.
Mark Mitchell says you, as Prime Minister and as former Police Minister, are personally responsible for crime. Do you accept that?
No, I think the people that commit crime are responsible for crime, and I think anyone who wants to be Minister of Police would be well advised to start from that premise. Having said that, I think I did, in a short period of time as Minister of Police, quite a lot in the youth crime space. One of the first things that I did when I became Minister of Police was work with the agencies to identify who the kids were at the core of the ram raid offending that we were seeing and identify what we could do to get them out of trouble. The fast track initiatives that we put in place very quickly have actually turned the lives around of about 3/4 of those kids. There are still 1/4 of those kids that are proving to be problematic, and so we've done more in recent months in order to target those. I don't think personalising them in that way is the sort of response that you could expect from someone who wants to be Minister of Police.
I think Lloyd has a burning beetroot question.
Oh, pure and
Let's-
easy.
Joe.
Prime Minister, pure and
Joe.
easy baby beats. Just one last one. Pure and easy baby beats.
It would depend on the way they're processed. Joe?
Are you aware of the allegations against the Deputy Chief Executive at Corrections who abruptly left last Friday? Newsrooms just published a story. Non-disclosure agreements, female employee complaints, etc.
No, I'm not. Sorry, I don't have any details on that one.
Oh, actually, I do have one last one. Frozen stir fry.
All right, thank you.
This one's got grilled capsicum in it. Would that
Thank you, everybody.
be
Cheers.
included?